This is actually from yesterday's news, but I want to play you a little comment from Karen Chihoa, who wants to sell the idea that fewer people working in the ministry is going to be a better outcome for children. And then we're going to go on to a couple of stories today, which is the reaction to the job cuts.
But OT and the minister in charge say the changes are actually to focus on children.
We're refocusing OT back to their core focus, which is our children and our young people, and making sure that our frontline services are resourced and have the tools that they need.
I think if they were really focused on children, they would have spoken to young people about what those changes are going to be, and they would have consulted with the agency that represents the voice of them.
The Prime Minister adamant it's all about getting rid of bureaucracy.
When you talk to New Zealanders, they do not want to see waste in our public services. They want to know that dollars are being spent and deployed towards the frontline services.
These cuts are reckless, and the government is doing so with no plan.
Big changes that could have big implications.
There you go. So that was from yesterday's story, but I did definitely want to get out this idea of, because we've been asking this for days now, and I've been putting it all over Twitter. You know, if you've got 50 staff that aren't getting you the objective you want, how is 40 staff then going to do it for you? It's been catnip to the I guess the anti-fascists out there saying, you know, look at Twitter, so much better now. It's only 600 people. It was 6,000 people. So much better, and it's just. And let me say this again. We said this last night. I'm not actually fighting for more people working in government departments. I'm fighting for the best outcome for us. If that's more, let's have more. I do and have had this conversation with many people over my sort of media career. I don't believe big government is better. I don't believe, like libertarians do, that smaller government is always better. The truth is, better government is better. And there might be times where departments need more people to be able to function. I'm sure there's times where fewer people would be able to function better. However, what we're not being told by this government is why they're dropping the numbers and how that will make this better. We're just being told, can't afford it, got to go. Got to live within your means. Remember, at the same time, Cherry, shall we say it together? They're giving $3 billion to landlords.
To landlords.
Yours, sir.
So I'm not going to sit here and say that Oranga Tamariki is a perfect government organisation. I'm not going to say it's got no problems. It's historically got a lot of problems. But we have some dreadful stats when it comes to kids in New Zealand. And I can't imagine a single case where having less people doing that job is going to create better outcomes. Mm-hmm. Managing a child that's in a situation bad enough for OT to be involved is not a manpower light thing. You need caseworkers that understand the particular circumstance of the child, and that could be a multifaceted array of challenges around this kid. And by the same token, fixing it could involve many different organizations, many different people. And if you have a person that knows this kid and knows their situation and is managing through fixing it, you need people to do that. You can't have someone that say they had 5 cases that they were managing in their week, right? 5 people, 5 families, 5 alternative carers, you know, all of that sort of stuff. And now their workload has doubled, tripled. There's more kids. Or the same kid has to be passed through different people's hands because the workload isn't being managed. You tell me if that outcome is going to be better for the kid. Yeah. You know, if they have to be uplifted and put with a different carer, is the appropriate amount of time going into vetting whether that's an appropriate situation to drop that child into.
Yeah.
You know, the it's one of those things is like you look at what could happen. What's the worst case scenario? Is it something that you can wear? Like if this kid, we're going to put them with another family member because that's what we should do. Honestly, up against a few deadlines, so we didn't look into it. Very good. And the kid goes into an even worse situation.
Yeah.
You know, can these changes stand up to the justification of another dead child?
Yeah. Yeah, because I mean, I don't want to be too dramatic here and say this will cause deaths, but I think there's no.
But it could.
There's no question that there will be at some stage over this term where someone will fall further through the gaps, or someone will have suffer more of an issue, and it could be as serious as that. And if that does happen, then what? Well, this government will go, oh, see the hangover from the last government. We're trying to work through this. And it's like, no, you broke government. You guys broke government.
One of the things with OT as well is, they were going through a generational change under Labour as well. It wasn't just a name change. It was. Do you remember the scandal of kids being uplifted too aggressively?
Yeah.
And that sort of thing. And that was a real review of like, well, are we doing this in the right way? And I don't think they really found it. They made some changes. They started making more considerations about how that they were doing it and that sort of thing. And that was all coming from frontline staff.
Yeah.
Going, well, this isn't those people, like the true people on the front line. I can't imagine that you would do that job and have a hard heart towards these kids. Like there will be people there that would take a bullet for these kids. And then they're being managed to death, and then to have a new government come in and make that worse.
Yeah.
It's not about the kids.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. Peter's given us a new turn. Shitification is the big trend in business and tech. Now it's the case with public services under this government. Is that a term that you've heard before? Shitification.
Shitification. Yep. It's making things worse. Because if something's perfect, then you can't roll out updates on new products.
Yep. Yes.
So you make them a little bit shitty.
Let's have a look at the update from this, because that was the story yesterday, yeah? And then tonight, of course, is the reaction to the cuts. And we're actually going to look at both stories from 1 and 3. They're both a couple of minutes each, but they both kind of give a slightly different perspective. Let's have a look.
A principal says the swathe of education cuts mean people already doing full-time jobs could be working even harder. More than 2,000 roles have now been slashed across the public sector, and despite assurances, there's concern frontline staff will be affected after the minister confirmed losses in regional offices. Laura Frickberg reports.
Regional branches of the Ministry of Education play a key role in supporting schools and students. But now the union says dozens of staff at sites like these could lose their jobs.
That will have a detrimental impact on learning outcomes for children and young people all over New Zealand.
The government has repeatedly said the front line won't be affected by proposed job cuts. But the PSA says cutting the regions is proof it will be, with the Education Ministry's own website describing staff who work there as being part of the front line.
It is very clear from the Ministry's website.
So what's happening is the government is going to determine what the front line is, and they're going to be different to what perhaps the industry determines the front line to be. And so the government is going to re-examine and redefine what the front line is, and then they're going to say, we're not touching the front line. You know, it's like saying, my new car only has 3 wheels, and I'm redefining all cars to have 3 wheels, so I only need 3 wheels, so my 3-wheel vehicle is a car. They're redefining what the definition is, and then they will say, yes, we're falling within the definition. And it'll be different to what the definition was 5 minutes ago. That's what I think is going to happen, Joey.
That they are axing 87 roles in frontline education.
The Education Minister, though, says the government is planning to add curriculum experts to the regions too.
Anyone who deals directly with a teacher or directly with a child, or those services that support teachers and students, it is my expectation that the reprioritisation will not include those people.
It's very worrying.
But that's not what we're being told. We're being told it will include those people.
The sector, because we're wondering, so does that mean the people who are left in the ministry with full-time jobs have to work harder?
The Education Ministry still won't confirm exactly where the cuts will be, but reiterated around half are empty roles that simply won't be filled. Public policy professor Arthur Grimes says the entire public service has increased 32% in 6 years.
I think there's been far too much growth in the higher management levels in the public service in recent years. There's not enough trust perhaps being put in the people below them to actually come out with recommendations that they think are appropriate.
Well, that's something the Finance Minister has asked the Public Service Commission for advice on. Yesterday brought the total number of proposed cuts in the public service to more than 2,000. The question now, which department is next? Laura Frick.
So one of the things I realised, I was talking with someone today, was it with you, Chewy? Have we talked today? I don't know. I feel like I'm always talking to you. Is that actually, if you think about this logically, right, just purely logically, to get rid of staff and operate better means at the moment those staff have to have a negative influence. So I was talking to someone about, a road, like someone building a road, right? And you're building a road, you've got a number of guys working on the road, guys and girls working on the road, and they're building the road and they're laying the asphalt and that kind of stuff. And if there's one slacker in the group and he's only pulling 10% of his weight, that's still something that someone else would have to do if he wasn't there. So what it actually means is to make it more efficient and work better with fewer people is that guy actually needs to go around and be re-digging up stuff and making more work for them to do. So unless these people that are going are making, I know it sounds silly, but more work for the ones left over to be doing, then actually, even if they're all slackers and lazy and layabouts, which obviously we don't think they are, that are only doing a half job and a full-time wage or whatever, that's still a half job times 6.5% that has to get picked up by the remaining people. It just makes no sense at all, Chewy.
Imagine if this is like, we need to make cuts, but let's say that the back rooms are fat with people that are just there for the free coffee. Imagine if the government said, we want to free up more funding for the Frontline.
Yep.
We want to pay the caseworkers and the counsellors more. We want to pay the teachers more, and this is how we're going to do it. Is that what's happening? Was that their pitch angle? Or was it just funneling money to landlords and gutting the public service to do it?
Yeah. Because remember, don't believe we can't afford it. We can afford it. We're choosing to prioritise money going to landlords and others over people who are in the back room helping teachers in the front room. In the back room of Oranga Tamariki, helping the people who are helping the kids who need more help than anyone else in the country. They're making a choice.
That's what we can afford just by dropping the promised tax cuts.
Yep.
What can we afford if we go after the people that are hoarding their money at the expense of everyone else they share the country with?
Yeah.
What about what can we get at that point?
You always find a way to get to those 311 families, eh?
I'm never going to forget that.
All right.
I'm never going to forget
This is the same topic, but TV3 or News Hub did a slightly different perspective, which is David Seymour calls for a reality check as public sector jobs cuts spark outcry. Let's have a look what TV3 said about it tonight.
David Seymour is calling for a reality check after the outcry over the latest round of public sector job cuts.
The ACT leader says they're small in comparison to growth across the public service under the previous government. Political reporter Jamie Ensor has more.
Schools out at Porirua College as the government continues.
I'm sorry, and I know I'm a scratched record here. They're small in relation to how many the last government put in, but you're still not telling us why the last government's number was wrong and yours is right. You're still not telling us why. You're still not showing us. I couldn't give a flying fig if it was double the last number that before you guys got in. If it was now operating better, that's a good thing. So rather than just saying the cuts are going to be less than the additions were, tell us why National and ACT and New Zealand First plan is better and Labour's was worse, rather than just going numbers bigger, bad, numbers smaller, good. Because that's pretty much all we're getting at the moment, Chewy.
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely.
continues its clean out of public service workers, which could include members of the school lunches team.
Well, we know that Māori and Pacifica students are in the lower socioeconomic groups, and the school lunches actually target those groups.
Newshub's also obtained documents showing the Ministry of Education's Te Hure Hanganui team, which supports communities to address racism, is also in the firing line.
Of course!
The ministry won't say which...
Supports the, did you get the definition? Supports the teams to address racism. They're getting rid of that one.
To address racism is also in the firing line.
Yeah, it's been solved because he was a black president of the United States. Is that right?
We fixed it.
Yeah. Yep. So, of course, that's going as well.
The ministry won't say which roles could go, but changes are designed not to impact students and teachers.
If we don't confront our unconscious bias with a third-party support, because you can't do it on your own, we're not going to be able to do that.
Having public servants sticking their beaks into how people treat each other has made us a more complicated and divided country.
As well
as this current government is sticking their beaks into everything and telling parents how to raise their children. And look, don't come at me with a whataboutism. Well, that's what the left do. I don't care if the left did this and you hated it. It doesn't stop that now. The right is doing this. If the left is all about nanny state and your response is, but the left is more nanny state, it's like, well, I'll give you that point. I don't agree, but let's say you're right. You're correct. That doesn't negate the point that these guys are now doing what they've said to all these other people you should never do. All right. And because these are the guys in power, these are the guys who we look at and critique. We don't go, hey, let's fix that problem that Labor had 16 years ago. We go, hey, let's fix that problem we've got in front of us today that are going to impact us tomorrow and through the next cycle and the next cycle. We can't change what happened. Doesn't mean we give them a pass if they've been doing the same thing. But this government are the ones who've said, don't stick your beak in. Libertarians, less government, smaller government. We don't want that. And they're the ones that are telling parents now how to raise their kids, when they're sick, when they're not sick, what they're allowed to have in their bags going to school and not. It's just hypocrisy. And if you can't see it, you're either a moron or you're being willfully ignorant. In other words, you're choosing not to see it, Chewy.
I think every time that Rimmer talks about, the government shouldn't be involved in telling people how to treat each other. It's always this disingenuous argument that racism and division is caused by acknowledging it. Like acknowledging that there are different races and cultures in this country is creating division. Recognizing that there are past wrongs that perhaps need to be righted is racism. And everybody should be treated the same, because that sounds lovely and cuddly, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's just farcical. It's amazing how shallow his thinking is on this stuff.
Yeah, that's a really good way of putting it. He's probably choosing not to go to level 2. It's probably not that he can't. It's he knows what the headline will get, and he knows that those backing him and that those voted for him just want to hear, rah, 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 let's stop all this woke claptrap and get on with things. Whilst they at times are doing the exact definition of what they've described as woke, and they are sending out signals, and they are, they're doing all the same things that they're accusing the others of doing, and that's what's frustrating, along with a lot of other things. We'll keep going.
There's 565 jobs at the Ministry of Education. Oranga Tamariki yesterday proposed 447 roles will be lost.
That's a lot of people to be potentially losing their jobs.
There needs to be a reality check here. Everybody's gnashing and wailing about the public service. The reality is it's grown more in the last 6 years, much more in fact than any reduction happening right now.
OT's workforce.
And why is it better to reduce it, Rimmer?
Has grown from under 4,000 in 2018 to just under 5,000 at the end of last year, a 26% increase. It now has about 5,100 permanent and...
I had a look at that actually out of interest. At that time period, it went from about 4.8, 4.9 to about 5.2, 5.3. It's not 27% increase, but there has been an increase. So all these people are going around going, we want the numbers to go back to 2017 numbers of public servants. Yeah, well, even if I gave you that, it would have to be more than that because of the population growth, at the very least. I had some moron on my Twitter feed today say, lesser, the lesser number, fewer people. Fewer people is always better in government. I said, well, that means by your logic, 0 would be the best number. Because if you got to 50,000, then 45,000 would be better. If you got to 45,000, then 40,000 would be better. If you got to 12,000, then 10,000 would be. So in other words, what you're saying, Mr. Moron, is that 0 would be the best way to run government. That means no teachers, no nurses, no doctors. You know, it's just lunacy. It's idiocy is what it is.
Term staff, removing 450 roles takes it back to where it was mid last year. Over at the Ministry of Education, there's been a 55% staffing increase over the past 5 years. Losing 565 roles would return them to pre-2022 levels.
It's justified to spend more money on supporting our most vulnerable children.
The simple number of people being hired doesn't mean people get better results.
The governing parties were elected on a promise to pare back the public service, and they see these job cuts as delivering. The opposition, however, argues that the bureaucratic boost is in line with the public they serve because the population has grown. The public service has grown 32% in the past 5 years, but as a proportion of the total workforce, it's only a very slight increase.
But it hasn't exploded.
It's not always true that because the population increases, the size of the public workforce has to increase.
And it's likely more cuts are
What
on the
a
cards.
moron.
Jamie Ensor, News.
That's as stupid as saying, just because there's more kids in the school, why does that mean we need more teachers? You don't necessarily see better outcome with more kids in the school having more teachers. Of course you fucking do, you
Pat,
idiot.
I'm glad you brought that up because we're increasing class sizes to 55. And that's shitty. So here's my answer.
But
privately run charter schools.
You're missing something. Though. He would reduce, grow the classroom sizes to 55, and he would take off regulations making the teachers standing in front of those 55 kids less qualified. Got to remember that bit as well.
I'm sure he's going to pivot at some point and go, you know what, overcrowding in schools is diabolical, and we all know that not all of these kids are going to make it in the corporate world. What a lot of these children really crave. What these children crave, Pat, is to return to the mines. We're going to send them to the West Coast and open up the Shane Jones Memorial Coal Pit. And it's going to be filled with all the 14-year-olds that couldn't cut it.
Hang on. We've got to be careful saying this because someone will clip it. But if you say the Shane Jones Memorial Coal Pit, that implies he's no longer with us.
Might be getting a bit ahead of myself. Who knows? Commemorative. Oh, no, that's the same thing. Everybody knows. Look, when Shane Jones pops his clogs, all the racetracks in this country will get renamed.
Yeah.
To the Shane Jones Memorial Racetrack.
Hang on, probably half of them will be for Winston as well. He's done pretty good in the industry as well.